My dear friends, in a world obsessed with what is seen, measured, and controlled, we often forget the most powerful force of all, the unseen hand of God. The hand that moves not in thunder or fire, but in the gentle whisper of our daily lives. We marvel at miracles, yet fail to see that every breath, every moment is itself a miracle. We look for God in the extraordinary, yet He is just as present in the ordinary, in the kindness of a stranger, the struggles we endure, the doors that close, and the ones that open when we least expect. Tonight I invite you to look beyond the veil of the visible, to recognize that the same God who parted the Red Sea is the God who guides your every step today. Whether in triumph or trial, whether in joy or suffering, His hand is at work. And if we dare to trust Him, we will find that nothing in our lives is truly ordinary. Everything, every challenge, every success, every failure carries the fingerprints of the divine. God's presence is not limited to grand miracles or supernatural interventions. It is woven into the fabric of everyday life, present in the simple and the mundane. From the moment we wake up to the time we rest at night, there is a divine rhythm orchestrating each detail of our existence. Yet too often we look for God only in the extraordinary, the moments of great breakthroughs, miraculous healings, or unexpected blessings, while failing to recognize that His hand is just as active in the seemingly ordinary aspects of life. Consider the rising of the sun, the breath in our lungs, and the ability to think, move, and feel. These are not mere biological functions or random occurrences. They are signs of a sustaining power that holds all things together. The same God who parted the Red Sea is the one who keeps the earth rotating in perfect order, ensures that the seasons change at their appointed times, and provides for even the smallest creatures of His creation. Yet, because these things happen daily, we seldom stop to see them as acts of divine grace. In our search for meaning, we often overlook the quiet ways in which God speaks. A kind word from a stranger, an unexpected delay that saves us from harm, a sudden memory that brings comfort in a time of distress. All these can be moments of divine intervention, but because they do not come with flashing lights or dramatic revelations, we dismiss them as coincidence or mere chance. The truth, however, is that there is no such thing as coincidence in a world governed by a sovereign God. Every detail of our lives is under His watchful eye, and even the most routine experiences can be infused with His purpose. The ordinary tasks of daily life, working, studying, taking care of our families, are often seen as distractions from spirituality rather than a part of it. We compartmentalize faith, believing that it belongs only in moments of prayer, worship, or significant life events. But Scripture shows us that God has always worked through the ordinary. He called shepherds, fishermen, and tax collectors. He spoke through burning bushes, gentle winds, and the stillness of the night. Jesus Himself spent 30 years in quiet obedience before stepping into public ministry, showing that even the hidden seasons of life are filled with divine purpose. In the biblical account of Elijah, the prophet expected to hear God in the powerful wind, the earthquake, and the fire, but God was not in any of these dramatic displays. Instead, He spoke in a still, small voice. This is a profound reminder that the most profound experiences of God often come in the moments we least expect. He is just as present in the silent prayers of a mother, the diligence of an honest worker, and the perseverance of a student striving for excellence. When we shift our perspective, we begin to see that God is not absent in the ordinary. He is the very foundation of it. The food on our table, the roof over our heads, the opportunities that come our way. These are not merely the results of our own efforts, but the provision of a loving Father who knows our needs before we even ask. Gratitude opens our eyes to these daily blessings, allowing us to see the invisible hand that sustains us. Life's challenges also carry the fingerprints of God. It is easy to see Him in the moments of answered prayers, but He is just as present in the seasons of waiting, in the struggles that shape our character, and in the setbacks that redirect us toward something greater. When Joseph was sold into slavery, he could have assumed that God had abandoned him. But every moment of his life, from the pit to the prison to the palace, was a step in a divine plan. What seemed like an ordinary series of unfortunate events was, in fact, God's orchestration of something far beyond human understanding. The same is true for each of us. We may not always see the full picture, but that does not mean God is not at work. A job that seems tedious may be the training ground for a greater calling. A relationship that ends may be God's way of preparing us for something better. A difficult season may be equipping us with the wisdom and strength needed for what lies ahead. Nothing is wasted in God's plan, and nothing is truly ordinary when seen through the eyes of faith. The ability to recognize God in the ordinary requires a heart that is attuned to His presence. It means slowing down, being present in the moment, and acknowledging that even the smallest details of life hold spiritual significance. It means understanding that worship is not confined to church walls, but is lived out in how we treat others, how we approach our work, and how we navigate the everyday moments of life. It means trusting that the same God who performed miracles in the past is still moving in our lives today, not always in dramatic ways, but in the quiet, unseen details that shape our journey. The extraordinary is often hidden in places we least expect, concealed beneath the veil of the ordinary, the routine, and sometimes even the painful. We live in a world that celebrates the grand, the visible, and the instantly gratifying, but God operates differently. His most powerful works are often disguised in the mundane, the unnoticed, and the seemingly insignificant. We search for signs and wonders, but fail to realize that the most profound movements of God are not always found in burning bushes or parted seas. They are just as present in the quiet whispers of life. Throughout history, the greatest moments of divine intervention were often hidden from the eyes of those who were too focused on the spectacular. When Jesus entered the world, He did not arrive with royal fanfare or the display of heavenly armies. He was born in a humble stable to a simple carpenter and a young girl in an obscure town. The King of Kings walked among the people as one of them, blending into the crowds, unnoticed by many, unrecognized even by those who claimed to be waiting for Him. The extraordinary presence of God was hidden in the ordinary form of a man, teaching us that His greatest works are often wrapped in simplicity. When God moves, He often does so in ways that do not immediately appear miraculous. a job opportunity that comes after months of waiting, a random encounter that leads to a life-changing decision, a closed door that redirects us to something far greater. These moments may not seem extraordinary at first, but they carry within them the fingerprints of divine orchestration. We tend to think of miracles as instant and dramatic, but some miracles unfold over time, hidden in the daily grind, only fully understood when we look back and see how every piece fit together. Consider the story of Moses. For 40 years he lived as a shepherd in the wilderness, tending sheep, unaware that he was being prepared for something far greater. To an outsider, it may have seemed like a life of insignificance, a man wasting his years in isolation. But in reality, he was being molded, his heart being prepared, his character being refined. When the time came for him to lead an entire nation out of bondage, the years spent in the wilderness were no longer meaningless. They were the hidden foundation for his extraordinary calling. What seemed ordinary was, in fact, the very work of God, shaping him for the extraordinary. God's extraordinary work is not limited to history. It is happening right now in lives all around us. A single mother raising her children with faith and resilience may not see herself as part of a divine plan, but her daily sacrifices are shaping destinies. A teacher pouring wisdom into young minds may not see the full impact of their work, but generations will be transformed because of their faithfulness. A person enduring a difficult season may not understand the purpose of their suffering, but on the other side of it, they may find that their greatest struggle was the very thing God used to position them for something far greater than they could have imagined. We often ask for clarity, for signs, for undeniable proof that God is working in our lives. But faith is trusting that He is present even when we do not see immediate results. Just as a seed must be buried before it grows, so too must God's plans often remain hidden before they bloom into something visible. A caterpillar does not look like a butterfly while it is still in the cocoon, but the transformation is happening nonetheless. The extraordinary is in motion, even when it is not yet revealed. God also works through people we least expect. Throughout Scripture, He used the overlooked, the weak, the outcasts, and the unqualified. David was a shepherd boy before he became a king. Joseph was a prisoner before he became second in command over Egypt. Mary was a simple young woman before she became the mother of the Savior. Time and again, God chose the hidden, the forgotten, and the ordinary to bring about His greatest plans. This pattern should remind us that what we dismiss as insignificant may hold divine purpose beyond what we can comprehend. The story of Ruth offers another glimpse into how God works behind the scenes. When she lost her husband and chose to follow Naomi back to Bethlehem, she had no idea what her future held. She simply stepped forward in faith, taking each day as it came. To an outsider, she was just a widow gathering grain in a field, a woman trying to survive. But in the unseen, God was weaving together the details of her life in a way she could not yet understand. The field she chose to work in was not random. It belonged to Boaz, the man who would later become her husband. What seemed like ordinary survival was actually divine positioning. She could not see the full picture at the time, but God was working in the details. Faith in the unseen work of God requires trust. It demands a belief that even when circumstances do not align with expectations, God is still in control. It calls for patience, a willingness to keep moving forward, even when there is no immediate evidence of progress. Just as an architect works on the foundation of a building before its structure becomes visible, God is laying the groundwork before revealing his plan. The challenge for many is resisting the urge to take control. When results are not immediate, there is a temptation to force solutions, to manipulate circumstances, to move ahead without waiting on God's timing. But forcing something before its time often leads to unnecessary struggle. Trusting in God's unseen work means surrendering personal timelines, letting go of the need for immediate answers, and believing that even when nothing appears to be happening, he is still actively working all things together for good. God's methods are not always understandable. His ways are not predictable. The very things that seem like obstacles may actually be the tools he is using to shape a person's future. A rejection may be protection. A delay may be preparation. A loss may be making room for something greater. The unseen work of God is always in motion, and in time, what was once hidden will be revealed in a way that makes it clear he was working all along. There are moments in life when everything seems uncertain, when the future feels clouded, and when no clear direction is visible. In these times, the natural instinct is to search for control, to find security in plans, and to rely on human understanding. But faith does not operate in certainty. It thrives in trust. Trusting God when the path is unclear is one of the greatest challenges of faith. Yet it is also one of the greatest opportunities to experience his guidance, provision, and presence in a deeper way. Human nature desires clarity. People want to know what comes next, what decision to make, and how things will unfold. The unknown is uncomfortable because it removes control. But faith was never meant to be lived with a full map in hand. God often reveals only the next step, not the entire journey. Abraham was called to leave his homeland without knowing where he was going. He was given a promise, but not a timeline. All he had was a word from God, and he had to trust that each step of obedience would lead him where he was meant to be. Trusting God when the path is unclear requires letting go of the need for immediate answers. One of the greatest struggles in uncertain seasons is resisting fear. When the future is unclear, fear creeps in, whispering doubts and magnifying worst-case scenarios. It becomes easy to focus on what might go wrong, what could be lost, and what risks are involved. But faith is the opposite of fear. Faith chooses to believe that even if the path is unclear, God is still guiding. Faith rests in the truth that he sees the full picture, even when only a small piece is visible. Fear paralyzes, but faith moves forward, even if that movement is one small step at a time. There are times when God's direction does not make logical sense. He may call someone to walk away from a secure job without immediately providing another opportunity. He may lead someone to a place they never expected to go. He may ask for obedience without offering immediate explanation. This is where trust is tested. It is easy to trust when everything is clear, when doors open easily, when signs confirm every step. But real trust is developed in the moments when nothing seems certain, when every instinct says to hold back, yet the quiet voice of God says, go. The Israelites faced this when they stood at the edge of the Red Sea. They had left Egypt in obedience, yet suddenly they found themselves trapped between the water and the pursuing army. From their perspective, the path was unclear. Fear overtook them, and they questioned why they had been led into such a situation. But what they could not see in that moment was that God had already made a way. The sea had not yet parted, but the path was there, waiting to be revealed at the right time. If they had turned back in fear, they would have missed the miracle. Trusting God in uncertainty does not mean passively waiting for everything to become clear before taking action. It means being willing to take the next step, even if it is taken in faith alone. It means praying for wisdom, seeking His guidance, and then moving forward with confidence that He will direct each step. The steps may not always make sense in the moment, but in hindsight they reveal a path that was orchestrated with precision. The process of trusting God in unclear seasons is not just about reaching a destination, it is about transformation. The journey itself refines faith, strengthens dependence, and builds character. When clarity is removed, reliance on God deepens. When certainty is stripped away, the ability to hear His voice becomes sharper. The seasons of the unknown are where faith is stretched, where spiritual growth accelerates, and where the deepest encounters with God take place. The story of Peter walking on water illustrates this perfectly. When Jesus called him to step out of the boat, the path was not secure. There was no solid ground beneath his feet, only water. As long as his eyes were fixed on Jesus, he walked forward in faith, but the moment he focused on the wind and the waves, the uncertainty and the fear, he began to sink. The lesson was not just about the miracle of walking on water. It was about where trust is placed. When trust is placed in circumstances, in security, in human understanding, fear takes over. But when trust is placed in God alone, even the most uncertain paths become walkable. Trusting God when the path is unclear requires surrendering the illusion of control. It is recognizing that He is not only present in the clear moments, but also in the uncertain ones. It is a daily decision to believe that even when nothing makes sense, even when answers are not immediate, even when the way forward is unknown, He is leading, He is working, and He is faithful. Every moment of life, whether ordinary or extraordinary, is woven with the unseen hand of God. He works in ways beyond human understanding, guiding through closed doors, refining through trials, preparing in silence and leading even when the path is unclear. What seems like coincidence is often divine orchestration. What appears as delay is often preparation. What feels like loss is often redirection toward something greater. Faith is not about seeing the whole picture. It is about trusting the one who does. The challenges, the uncertainties, the unexpected turns, all of them are part of a divine design that is always working for good. Every moment of disappointment, every season of waiting, every unanswered question is an invitation to trust that God is at work, even when His hand is unseen. The greatest comfort is knowing that no one walks alone. God is present in the silent seasons, guiding in the unseen moments, and working all things together with perfect timing. The path may not always be clear, but the destination is secure. The journey may be filled with unknowns, but the one leading it is faithful. Trust in his hand, even when you cannot see it, because his plans are always greater than anything you could have imagined. God's delays often come when we feel most ready. We assume that because we are willing, because we desire something good, because we see the need, it should happen immediately. But readiness in our eyes is not always readiness in God's eyes. A farmer does not harvest before the crop is fully grown, and a builder does not remove scaffolding before the structure is complete. There is a divine process at work, and sometimes what we see as stagnation is actually a season of strengthening. The waiting period teaches reliance on God, deepens faith, and removes anything in us that would hinder the fulfillment of his promises. It is easy to trust God when prayers are answered quickly, when doors open without resistance, and when blessings flow effortlessly. But true faith is revealed in the waiting. It is in the moments of delay that character is tested, motives are purified, and dependency on God is strengthened. The waiting season is where impatience must be surrendered, where control must be released, and where trust must take root. It is where faith is refined, no longer based on immediate gratification, but on the assurance that God's plans are always higher, always wiser, and always for our ultimate good. Delays also serve as protection. Sometimes what we desire is not yet ready for us, or we are not yet ready for it. A door that remains closed may be keeping us from stepping into something prematurely, where our lack of preparation could lead to failure or harm. God sees what we cannot see and knows what we do not know. What appears to be a setback may be divine protection, shielding us from paths that would lead to unnecessary struggle. What seems like an unanswered prayer may be the very thing that spares us from a situation that is not aligned with God's perfect will. The challenge of divine delays is learning to rest in the assurance that God is at work, even when nothing appears to be changing. It requires the discipline of faith, the ability to trust that he is not ignoring our prayers, but rather aligning them with his greater plan. His delays are not random or punitive. They are purposeful, intentional, and always for a reason. Even when circumstances seem stagnant, God is moving behind the scenes, arranging details, shaping our hearts, and preparing the way for something that, when revealed, will be far greater than anything we could have orchestrated on our own. Closed doors are often seen as obstacles, sources of frustration, and moments of disappointment. When a job opportunity slips away, when a relationship ends, when a carefully made plan falls apart, the natural response is to question why. It is easy to feel that something has been unfairly taken, that a chance has been missed, or that life has taken an unfortunate turn. But in the grand scheme of God's plan, closed doors are not merely denials or setbacks. They are divine redirections, intentional acts of guidance, steering us towards something better, something greater than we could have anticipated. Human perspective is limited. People see what is immediately in front of them. judge based on present circumstances and assume they know the best path forward. But God sees the entire picture, not just where a road leads today, but where it ultimately ends. What appears to be a missed opportunity may in reality be God's way of keeping us from a future that would not serve His purpose in our lives. A job that was lost may have led to burnout, an environment of compromise, or a distraction from a greater calling. A relationship that ended may have prevented heartache, misalignment, or settling for something less than what God had planned. A dream that did not materialize may have been a diversion from the true destiny waiting to unfold. Joseph's story in the Bible is a perfect example. His early years were filled with what seemed like closed doors. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned. Each event could have been viewed as a failure, a roadblock to the great future he once envisioned. But every door that closed redirected him closer to the fulfillment of his purpose. Had he remained in his father's house, he would never have reached the position of power that allowed him to save an entire nation. What seemed like painful detours were actually strategic steps ordered by God. Trusting that a closed door is divine redirection requires faith. It demands a belief that God is actively involved in every detail, even when things do not go according to plan. It means surrendering personal expectations and accepting that His ways are higher, His thoughts beyond human understanding. The discomfort of a door shutting in the face of hope can be overwhelming. But hindsight often reveals that what felt like a loss was actually a rescue. Looking back, many realize that had they received what they desperately wanted at the time, they would have settled for less than what was meant for them. Timing is another key factor in divine redirection. Sometimes a door is not permanently closed, but temporarily shut until the right season arrives. David was anointed king as a young man, but years passed before he actually ascended to the throne. Had he forced his way in before the appointed time, he would not have been the leader God had fully prepared him to be. There are moments when something we desire is not yet ready for us, or we are not yet ready for it. Rushing ahead of God's plan can lead to unnecessary struggle, while waiting for His timing brings the assurance of His provision and blessing. Closed doors also serve to refine character. They challenge patience, reveal dependence on God, and strip away misplaced security. It is easy to trust God when everything is falling into place, but faith is truly tested when things seem to fall apart. The process of redirection teaches perseverance, strengthens trust, and deepens spiritual maturity. A door closing forces a person to reassess priorities. Listen more intently for God's voice and remain open to unexpected paths. What may initially feel like rejection can, in reality, be the foundation for growth and transformation. The difficulty lies in resisting the urge to push through doors that God has clearly shut. Human nature resists rejection, fights against delay, and attempts to force outcomes. But striving against divine redirection only leads to frustration and exhaustion. The better response is surrender, to acknowledge that if something did not work out, if a door remained closed despite every effort, then there is a reason beyond human understanding. The same God who opens doors no man can shut also shuts doors no man can open. His guidance is not meant to harm, but to protect and position for something greater. God's redirection often leads to places that were never considered. People become so focused on one outcome, one goal, one path, that they fail to see the greater possibilities beyond it. A lost job may lead to a new career that was never before imagined. A failed plan may make way for an unexpected opportunity. A painful ending may create space for a new beginning filled with greater joy and purpose. What initially seems like a detour may in fact be the most direct route to destiny. The challenge is to embrace closed doors with the same faith that welcomes open ones, to trust that even when things do not make sense, they are part of a divine design that is always working for good. What is lost is not always a loss. What is denied is not always a denial. What is taken away is not always meant to be kept. The key is to believe that every redirection is leading towards something not just different, but better. God's work is not always visible, but that does not mean he is inactive. In the moments of uncertainty, in the seasons of silence, in the places where it seems nothing is happening, God is often doing his most profound work. Human beings are conditioned to measure progress by what can be seen and understood. If there is movement, if there are tangible results, then it must mean something is working. But the ways of God are different. His greatest works often take place in the unseen, in the background, beyond what human eyes can perceive. Seeds do not sprout the moment they are planted. There is a process, a time of waiting, a hidden transformation beneath the soil. To an impatient observer, it may seem as if nothing is happening, as if the seed has been buried in vain. But beneath the surface, roots are growing, strength is forming, and the foundation for life is being established. The unseen work of God operates in the same way. When prayers seem unanswered, when efforts appear fruitless, when circumstances do not change, it does not mean that nothing is taking place. God is working in ways that cannot yet be perceived, shaping, preparing, and bringing things into alignment for the right time. There are countless moments in life when it seems as though God is silent. A person prays for direction, but hears nothing. A door is knocked on repeatedly, but does not open. A need is presented, but remains unmet. The temptation in these moments is to assume that God is distant, disinterested, or withholding. But silence is not absence. In the unseen realm, he is orchestrating details that cannot yet be comprehended. Just as a skilled artist works on the intricate details of a masterpiece before unveiling it, God is crafting something greater than what is immediately visible. Joseph's journey is a testimony to this truth. When he was thrown into a pit by his own brothers, when he was sold into slavery, when he was falsely accused and imprisoned, it would have been easy for him to conclude that God had abandoned him. Yet in every setback, God was positioning him for something greater. Each trial was not a step backward, but a step forward in disguise. When Joseph was in prison, it seemed as though nothing was happening. He was forgotten by those he helped, left in a place where he had no control over his future. But while it looked like nothing was changing, God was working behind the scenes, preparing the exact moment when Joseph would be called upon to interpret Pharaoh's dream and rise to power. God's unseen work is not limited to extraordinary biblical figures. It happens in the lives of ordinary people every day. A person may be praying for an opportunity, unaware that God is working through circumstances to create the perfect opening. Someone may be facing a delay, not realizing that what they perceive as stagnation is actually divine preparation. A struggle may seem meaningless, but in the unseen it is refining character, deepening faith, and setting the stage for something that could not happen without it.